Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are here today to provide transparency, finally, to the American people. 7 years ago, the FBI launched Crossfire Hurricane, the left's brazen attempt to keep Donald Trump out of the White House. This federal investigation, funded by the Hillary Clinton campaign, caused Americans to believe that then-candidate Trump was colluding with Russia in order to win the 2016 presidential election. Mr. Durham has spent 4 years investigating this, 480 witnesses, 6 million pages of documents, 190 subpoenas, and executing 7 search warrants. Less than a month ago, he completed this report that instigated a baseless investigation and launched a partisan attack on President Trump, despite having no true justification to do this. That was the FBI. Within 3 days of receiving the information from a diplomat in Australia, the FBI opened a full-fledged investigation into the Trump campaign. So, Mr. Durham, let's get into this. The FBI opened up Crossfire Hurricane without speaking to the people who provided the initial information. Is that true?
That's correct.
The FBI opened Crossfire Hurricane on a Sunday, only 3 days after reviewing that information. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So just think about that for a moment. An investigation, a full investigation into a presidential campaign over a weekend. Mr. Durham, the FBI opened Crossfire Hurricane without interviewing any of the essential witnesses. Is that true?
That's true.
And the FBI also opened up Crossfire Hurricane without using any of the standard analytical tools typically employed to evaluate that evidence. Is that true?
That's true.
So think about that. The FBI never talked to the people who gave them the intelligence information. They never examined their own witnesses. They never interviewed the witnesses. They never corroborated the dossier. Mr. Durham, if the FBI had done these things, if they had done their homework, would it have found that its own Russian experts had no information about President Trump being involved with Russian leadership or Russian intelligence officials?
Yes.
So then, was there adequate predication for the FBI to open Crossfire Hurricane as a full investigation?
On July 31st, in my view, based on our investigation, there was not a legitimate basis to open as a full investigation. An assessment is something that had to be looked at, gather information, such as interviewing the people who provided the Papadopoulos information, checking their own databases, the databases of other intelligence agencies, and the standard kinds of things that you would do in an investigation like this.
Mr. Durham, I think it's safe to conclude, based on that report and anyone who has read it, that they did not have that adequate basis, as you talked about, to launch this investigation. Let's move on to a second really troubling aspect of your findings. From the report, I gathered that key FBI leaders, all the way at the top, were predisposed to go after candidate Trump. This bias likely affected the conduct of FBI personnel in this investigation. Is that true?
Yes.
Can you describe that for a moment? How did confirmation bias play into this?
Confirmation bias, as was alluded to, has to do with our human tendency to accept things that we already think are true and to reject anything else. In this instance, there are any number of significant red flags that were raised that were simply ignored. If there's evidence that was inconsistent with the narrative, they didn't pay attention to it. They didn't explore it. They didn't take the logical investigative steps that should have been taken.
Let's see how real this bias was. FBI Deputy Assistant Director Peter Strzok drafted and approved the Crossfire Hurricane opening communication. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And in your investigation, your office discovered text messages between Strzok and Lisa Page, who was the special assistant to the FBI Director McCabe, expressing strong bias against candidate Trump.
That's true.
For the record, let me read aloud. This was generated by staff, but this would look like their text messages. On August 18, 2016, Page texted Strzok, "Trump's not going to become president, right? Right?" And Strzok responded by saying, no, he's not. We'll stop it. It's clear that there was no evidence of Russia collusion with the Trump campaign in 2016. The American people deserve the truth, and I'm proud to serve on this committee to uncover these lies that were perpetuated for far too long. With that, Mr. Chairman, with my remaining 30 seconds, I will yield to you.
Since the chairman yielding back, we'll wait for my time. We'll now recognize the gentlelady from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Durham, for being here this morning. The ranking member explored an item that I wanted to explore with you, which is based on the information provided to the U.S. government by Australia. that a campaign aide had told one of their diplomats that the Russians had dirt on Clinton in the form of thousands of emails that, and this is a quote from your report, as an initial matter, there's no question the FBI had an affirmative obligation to closely examine the Australian information. So that's in your report. And I think the issue might be preliminary versus full, because you agree that there was an obligation to look at it based on that. Is that correct? That's what you say.
When you say based on that, some of the premises of the question are inaccurate. Papadopoulos did not tell the...
No, the question is, do you disavow what you said in your report? That you had an affirmative obligation, the FBI, to look at that?
The answer to that question, but they had to look at it, yes.
All right. I want to take a look at some of the other things that I didn't find in your report. In looking at the FBI's behavior, did you find any evidence that the FBI was taking a look at the hacking of the Democratic National Committee and their investigation of that? And if so, where is that in your report?
That was outside the scope of what I was asked to do.
And in the Mueller report, he found that the campaign manager, Mr. Manafort, was giving inside information, private polling data to the Russians, that there was a meeting in Trump Tower with the president's son-in-law and his son, where the Russians had promised they had dirt, and the email from the president's son was something to the effect of, "So we love it." Did the FBI look at that? Did you examine that? And if so, where's that in your report?
That is not something I was asked to look at, and we didn't look at that.
I'm wondering, did you take a look at how the FBI evaluated the alleged ties to Alpha Bank? Did you hire cyber experts to actually take a look at those potential or alleged ties?
Yes. Well, I didn't hire them. They were FBI experts.
And where's that in your report?
I can't, it's in there. I can find the page. My colleagues can find the page, but there's an entire section on Alpha Bank, the white papers and the data that were provided by Mr. Sussman to the FBI, and then the subsequent
No, but my question was, did you take a look, did you hire experts to evaluate the FBI's evaluation?
I did not hire experts to examine what the experts said, no.
Let me ask another question. I thought it was down a rabbit's hole, but you and Attorney General Barr went to Italy to take a look at some allegation about foreign servers, and Italian officials gave you evidence that they said linked Donald Trump to certain financial crimes. Did the Attorney General ask you to investigate that matter that the Italians referred to you? And if so, did you take any investigative steps, and did you file charges, or if not, did you file a declination memo for decision not to charge in this case?
The question's outside the scope of what I think I'm authorized to talk about. It's not part of the report. I can tell you this, that investigative steps were taken, grand jury subpoenas were issued, and it came to nothing.
I'd like to yield the balance of my time to my colleague from California, Mr. Schiff.
Mr. Durham, DOJ policy provides that you don't speak about a pending investigation, and yet you did, didn't you?
I'm not exactly sure what
when the Inspector General issued a report saying that the investigation was properly predicated, you spoke out in violation of Department of Justice policy to criticize the Inspector General's conclusions, didn't you?
I issued a public statement. I didn't do it anonymously. I didn't do it through third persons.
But nonetheless, you violated department policy by issuing a statement while your investigation was ongoing, didn't you?
I don't know that. If I did, then I did, but I was not aware that I was violating some policy.
And you also sought to get the Inspector General to change his conclusion, did you not? When he was concluding that the investigation was properly predicated, did you privately seek to intervene to change that conclusion?
This is outside the scope of the report, but if you want to go there, we asked the Inspector General to take a look at the intelligence that's included in the classified appendix that you looked at, and said that that ought to affect portions of his report.
And you thought it was appropriate for you to intervene with an independent investigation by the Inspector General because he was reaching a conclusion you disagreed with. You thought that was appropriate.
That's not, the premise isn't right. The Inspector General circulated a draft memo to a number of agencies and persons. Our group was one of them. We were asked to review that draft and bring to his attention any concerns that we had or disagreements.
And when he
Time of the gentleman-
refused
time
to
of the
change
gentleman
his,
has-
when
time of the
he
gentleman has
refused to
expired.
change his report,
Time of the gentleman's expired.